Hello, my name is Audrey Rwabwogo and I work at the Tomosi Group as a business trainer and strategy support officer. I welcome you all to our podcast. The Tomosi Group is a medium-sized business involved in agriculture, security, communication, and real estate, employing directly slightly over 400 people. Our biggest challenge in the last 21 years has been raising a skilled and reliable human capital to support growth. It is a challenge almost every business in Africa faces. This podcast is meant to help our officers and teams learn and improve their skill at work. It will also help hundreds of young people we speak to across Uganda in support of their enterprise growth. The podcast covers topics such as finance, sales, marketing, communication, and many more. This podcast is supported by the Tomosi Foundation, our community giving arm. Enjoy. Hello, this is Tomosi Group Training Sessions for 2020, and our first session is on sales. Today is April the 3rd, 2020, and we begin these sessions at a time of tremendous fear in the world because of the coronavirus that is spreading through all nations. Uganda is under total lockdown for the next 14 days, something unprecedented in recent memory for our nation. Just to give you some context beyond what might be your own family or personal or business fears, and maybe to give you even a wider picture. The Norwegian Academy of Sciences in 1976, when I was in primary one, estimated that since the year 3600 BC, there has been over 14,531 wars in the world of all manner and kind that have killed an estimated 3.6 billion people. The World War II alone killed an estimate of 54 million, both civilians and military. If we work the numbers, this means we have had only 292 years that can be considered as peaceful in these over 5,900 years of our human history of civilization. This means we have had on our planet about 2.6 wars per year and 1 year of peace every 2 decades. If I granulate these numbers further, this gives us 36 hours of peace every month. I can't believe this. Or 1 minute of peace every 4 hours. This means mankind has been in conflict ever since we learned to speak and to use weapons. The shape, of course, and form of weapons keeps changing, but the fighting, the death, and trouble seems to remain. This is why if you're a believer, you need to know that in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 33, it says, and I quote, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." When I was reflecting this week on this epidemic, I remember the years leading up to the March 10th, 1900 Buganda Agreement. In the kingdoms of Nkore, Bunyoro, Busongora, and parts of northwestern Buganda, the years 1892 to 1894 saw an outbreak of rinderpest, which decimated livestock and caused economic deprivation. It was followed by a giga infestation, especially in Nkore, which denied food to an already starved population. Soon after this, there was a breakout of smallpox. And on the heels of this last calamity, the British invasion, using collaborators, a majority from Buganda. By 1899, the major kingdoms in Uganda, their resistance was broken at Kongai sub-county in Dokolo district of Lango, with the capture of both Mwanga and Kabarega in April of that year. Specifically in Nkore, there was a man called MacLister. He was an army captain serving in the Imperial British Company. He decided to transform his title from the collector of taxes. You can imagine collecting taxes in such an impoverished population emerging from war, from epidemics. He transformed his title to district commissioner by 1897. We kept this title, adopted by the Uganda Public Service until 1896. But it was no surprise, therefore, that in 9 months, an agreement to end the ancient Buganda kingdom as we knew it was signed with the British. This agreement gave a beachhead, some sort of wind behind the colonization effort to attack all other smaller kingdoms of what would later be known as Uganda. None of these kingdoms existed in their old form or shape by the breakout of the First World War in 1914. One can therefore argue that in the natural and in the spiritual realms, that these epidemics heralded the end of the old order and the birth of a new one, whether kingdoms liked it or not, or whichever side the leaders of the time stood, either as resistors or collaborators. Now, in the 120 years since this milestone of Buganda Agreement, I cannot recall a time when we have had a total lockdown, the length and depth of which we have instituted in the last couple of days in Uganda, and I guess in many other parts of the world. Not during the peasant revolts of the late 1920s over the issue of rental charges by landlords from mile of Ibanja holders, revolts which we know produced the Busula and Mvujo laws of 1928. Not during Ignatius Musazi and the Katwe 1949 riots over the right of African farmers to sell their commodities directly. We know in history these riots birthed the initial fervor for political parties and independence. This did not happen during the Obote attack on Lubiri in 1967 and the abrogation of the constitution. It didn't happen when Idi Amin took over in January 1971 or when he was overthrown in 1979. It didn't happen when Kampala was divided under several warlords at the end of 1985, not even during the war against Joseph Kony up to 2006. In these phases I've mentioned, we've never had this kind of total country lockdown, strangely driven by government, well knowing it freezes production and reverses economic growth. This is unprecedented. It's a sign of the changing times and perhaps the birth of a new season in our lives, in our economy, in Africa. Rather than being taken down by fear, I would rather we reflect deeply, we study more the meaning of these circumstances, we analyze, we pray, and we work hard at planning for the various adaptations that are coming in our lives. Adaptations in our businesses, adaptations in social cultural settings, adaptations in the spiritual realm, and in many areas. I think we got to be ready as businesses and as a country. Now I want to give you an example. Let's assume for the last 40 years, your company has been in the large-scale shipping and transportation business. We know that since the year 1980, when China introduced economic reforms, this is probably the only industry that has had a 10% annual compounded rate of growth because, of course, of increased global trading patterns. Your company owns a fleet of large cargo ships that carry up to 180,000 metric tons in one lifting. These ships carry coal, coke, steel, and many other things that power your growing industries in your home country. You rent each of these ships to customers at a cost of $25,000 a day, and you pay your crew, the crew on the ship, $7,000 in fees. And suddenly, a global health pandemic breaks out. The shipping industry grinds to a halt. What do you sell to remain in business? Unfortunately, this is not a hypothetical example I have given you. It is the true picture of the shipping industry since February 1, 2020. The price for hiring these large cargo ships has dropped United States dollars 2,500 from 25,000. This is 10% of the original price. Money not enough to keep the crew on the ships for a single day. The ships are grounded. The price of oil has hit $20, creating a ripple effect in hospitality, in car purchases, in industrial production worldwide, and many other things. Now, there is a term for this kind of situation in life and in business. It is called a sinkhole moment. And this is how sinkholes are defined. I quote, "Sinkholes occur when underground streams drain away during seasons of drought, causing the ground at the surface to lose its underlying support. Suddenly, everything simply caves in, leaving people with a frightening suspicion that nothing, not even the earth beneath their feet, is trustworthy." Close quote. Sometimes running a business in difficult times can feel this way. This means to avoid this, or should I say to adapt when it strikes, a business must be like a hatchery of good products. You see, a hatchery, instead of relying simply on selling of eggs, a chicken farmer is concerned with the quality of the birds that lay the eggs. He or she must have the versatility to turn on one leg in the middle of a crisis and introduce new ways of doing old things, or bring fresh products that are iterations or innovations of the old ones. Hatcheries, interestingly, also tend to be like war zones. The stronger birds fight the weak ones for survival, which is a good hypothetical scenario for a business. Businesses that cannot adapt or businesses that live on revenues from other businesses, I guess, should not be allowed to live. Either way, selling these products, and I define selling as the art of uncovering the needs of the market or the buyers and convincing them to take the products of one's creativity. Let me repeat this. Selling, in my definition, is to uncover the needs. Please mark those words, they will come back down the road, and covering the needs of the buyers in the market and convincing them to take the products of your creativity. Selling these products requires a team that works in a symbiotic manner. The human resource department, for example, must raise and recruit the right qualifications from the labor market. They must build the best attitude among the people. The accounts department, who are storekeepers of the beans we harvest every day, must facilitate the exercise of selling by providing a very clear understanding of why every cost center should be matched with a revenue or profit center. The company leadership, such as ours in Duanilo, the CEO, they must lead the entire orchestra and know which strands of the instruments must be played by who and when and why. The CEO must know why some instruments aren't producing good sound. The CEO must seek to improve the individual performance as well as the overall performance, especially in the quality of people's output. The CEO must demonstrate why each one of us must be a salesperson for the company, lest we have no reason for us being together unless there is a return from each other's combined effort. Now, selling must begin with a full understanding of the product. That's why I introduced the word product at the start. It begins with understanding of the product in our hands. The questions to ask ourselves with the product is, what are the characteristics of what we sell? What are the features of what we sell? What are the benefits to customers of what we service or product we offer? How is this product different from what the competition offers? As I speak to you, I'm holding 5 different products from 5 different companies, all serving the same purpose at different times of the day. In my opinion, they serve one purpose: cure thirst and hunger. The purpose of the products, and I'm going to explain which products these are, they cure thirst and hunger. I'm holding in my hands as I speak to you a bottle from Rwenzori Water, which is manufactured by Nile Breweries, a beer company. I'm holding a bottle of Minute Maid product, a mango juice, a brand of Coca-Cola, a company that mixes sugar and water and serves it to us. I'm also holding a product called Happy Day. It's a blackcurrant juice product from Hungary. Interestingly, it sells a little more than what we produce locally, which means this company's cost of production are much lower than ours in Uganda. I'm also holding a can of strawberry-flavored milk from Jessa. And finally, I'm also holding vanilla-flavored yogurt from Milkman, a product of Vital Tomosi Dairy. Now, just to remind you, I do not need to use all these products in a combination to cure hunger and thirst. No. The worst-case scenario is that I can use only water among all these products. Why? Because all the products carry flavors. They also carry varying sugar levels. They all stay longer on the shelf for, of course, various lengths of time, yogurt being the shortest. These products are simply sold to me differently in order to make a basket of what I buy regularly. And I suppose this happens for the following reasons. 1, I have young children with varied tastes and preferences, and they take more per day of these drinks or anything that you can drink in the house more than the older people. Secondly, the product price ranges from Uganda shillings 1,000 to 8,000. It is a range in which I do not simply have to buy one type of product, but I can choose from a variety whenever I have funds. Number 3, the branding of these products, all of them, is attractive to the children. They are prime consumers. Number 4, sugar is not too much of an issue to children at their age now, given they burn a lot of calories running either at school or home. What I'm trying to say is that the differentiation in these products, therefore, for each one of them, to me, is simply the brand and nothing much of value add, but I still buy. And what's interesting to me is that I could make or get many of these products made at home. I could squeeze the juice myself as we do in our kitchen with lemons and beetroot. Why I can't do all this is that the consumer of these brands resides in my house, and therefore I have to alter their tastes and preferences as they grow older over time. And that takes time and preparation. I guess we will explain this better for understanding when we speak about brand and marketing in coming sessions. For now, let us just say you must know the product you sell so well. You must know who most likely will consume it in order for you to start thinking about the selling process. Not every product of creativity can be something you sell. Not everything has market potential. Therefore, what is your product and what knowledge do you have of it? And why do I ask you this question? It is because people buy from people. They don't necessarily buy from companies. Now, therefore, the above question answers the next two. What is your target market? What is your perceived niche? And how did you arrive at it? The above exercise I've just gone through in the first segment of our podcast is necessary for the salesperson to define the market in such a way that neither do they spread themselves thinly, trying to look the act, nor should they hold on to a service that has a dwindling or no long-term exploitable market. Now, in the last segment of our podcast, I want to focus on 4 stages of a sales call. A sales call can be done physically, face-to-face, can be done on phone, can be done in writing. So just take a sales call to be a pitch, if I can take it that way in a word that you would simply easily understand. So I want us to share 4 stages for you to understand how a sales call goes. The first stage is called the preliminary stage. This is where you, the seller of a product or service, makes an impression on the buyer's mind. Your confidence levels, your training, your understanding of the product, as I earlier explained, all matter a lot at this stage. This can be conducted, like I said, on phone or physically if you are lucky to be granted an appointment. This is where your language style, your command of communication is tested. Your dress style, your experience, and many other externalities that a buyer sees or hears makes good or poor impression of you. Please be careful to prepare for this stage, whether by letter or telephone or face-to-face. Our writing style, which we will deal with when we come to the segment of communication, matters here a lot. I, for example, have noticed a lot of mistakes in our letters in the past. People write in letters, as an example, when they intend to say I am. Now, a letter or an email is simply text, minus you, your physical presence, so it represents your tone and everything else. Be careful how you do this. Let's go to the second stage. We said the first stage was preliminary stage. The second stage is called the investigative stage. This is where you, the seller, uncovers the needs of the potential buyer. These needs might be expressed, such as, I quote, "Hey, I need a security system for my company," close quote. Others might be unexpressed ones like, quote, "I need an audit of our security system in order to get a reliable and sustainable solution." Now, in the first question, the first instance, the buyer probably wants to hire a guard. But in the second one, the buyer might want a full understanding of the options available to them so that they have peace of mind that their staff will be safe and their other assets will be protected by your solution, you, the seller. Now, I notice this all the time. Buyers or customers tend to go for specific products because they know little of what they need until options are presented to them. This might sound a little bit presumptuous, but it often is the reality. I can say with confidence that unexpressed needs are much more powerful, that good salespeople should aim at them from the start. Unexpressed needs can be equated perhaps to a situation where a salesperson is leading a potential buyer on a journey of self-discovery. By unveiling these unexpressed needs, one has the opportunity to sell more than what one came for initially. Unexpressed concerns or needs bring out the emotional aspects of the buyer. Let me give you an example. Why would a lady buy 2 or more pairs of shoes or handbags when she probably has more in her closet, not yet one? The answer could be, maybe buying shoes or handbags is a hobby. Or she probably stocks up for different occasions with a sense of, I quote, You probably never know when I will need this, close quote. Now, both of these answers are an expression of emotional needs, not the lack of shoes or handbags by the buyer. The other example of this question of unexpressed needs came to me very clearly this week at Shell Bunga in Kampala. An announcement by government of lockdown because of coronavirus at 10 a.m. triggered a mad rush at this little sleepy corner shop. I often use this place very late when I'm going home from work. The shop normally has no queues or traffic and has pleasant people who work there, who serve with a smile, and quite often they call us customers by name. At least they do for me. This time, none of us could get to the ATM nearby. Inside the shop, a man was packing up trays and trays of eggs on top of the other. They couldn't fit in the trolley. It looked like the eggs would go bad if they aren't eaten soon, but he didn't mind this. I obviously did not inquire about the size of his family, so maybe I was presumptuous, but he clearly looked to me as sort of unusual buyer at this location. The cashiers and agents at the shop were so overwhelmed with the traffic of shoppers that they began to lose their usual customer service composure and feel. Well, the true picture is that the lockdown got this gentleman I was watching so worried about tomorrow, which is an emotional feel, but not very expressed. Yet, you know what? The corner shop wasn't going to run out of stock the next day. In fact, I went back the next day to check, not to buy anything, just to check. I found all that had been picked in a rush had been restocked to the full. Did this gentleman need to pack up trays of eggs? No, but out of fear, he spent more than usual that day. This stage of the call, ladies and gentlemen listening to me, uncovers difficulties and dissatisfactions that a customer might have. The impact of the buyer on the income of profitability of the seller's solution if a decision is made. It's an extremely important stage in a sales call. It is the stage where professional salespeople show the buyer the kind of positive impact or return, whether on buyer's bottom line or the other aspects of their lives, the solution provided by the seller, if accepted, how it may change all these things for better. Now let's move to the third stage of the sales call. The third stage is called the demonstration of capabilities stage. This is where the seller clearly shows their solutions to the needs expressed by the last two stages. The questions of price, questions of seller's delivery time, questions of mobilization time if it is a service requiring advanced preparation such as, road construction, you need to mobilize equipment, security deployment, you have to put the men together and machinery, or production factory time. This stage shows the clarity of the value add the seller's product brings. Very quickly, let's go to the fourth and final stage of the sales call. It is called obtaining commitment stage. Here the buyer gives consent to the seller that he or she is willing to consider purchase, especially if this is a large sale. The buyer at this stage probably wants to inspect the seller's solution. They may want to watch a live demo or whatever choice the buyer has made ahead of the final decision he or she is about to make. Please be careful. Our experience here teaches us that this is the stage where we deal with various strange attitudes on both sides of the seller and the buyer, of the people involved, the decision making on both sides in regard to particular aspects of the transaction, the issues of indecision and delays and comparisons, even sometimes outright corruption in certain cases where buyers, some officials in the buying agencies, require payments before they commit. Let me tell you something. This is where values are truly seen, tested, or lost. Now, to conclude this podcast, let us note the following as a recap. 1. Difficult times like what we are in right now as businesses, as country, as continent, they demand of us adjustment and new ways of doing things. Difficult times can signal us out of the normal noise that there is a new era dawning on us and we need to open our eyes to the opportunities the crisis is presenting to us. Therefore, do not fear difficult times. I'd rather you are more concerned with what you're doing today, how you are doing it, and whether you are growing through it. I'm reminded of the story of the bubonic plague, used to be called the Black Death. that spread through Europe, Asia, and parts of North Africa in the year 1347. The plague was caused by fleas that were transported by rats on ships across the trading routes of the day. The plague caused boils, fever, and death. Now, because European cities at that time were largely poor, filthy in terms of sanitation in the Middle Ages, the method of treating this disease was archaic. They would, for example, do bloodletting of victims. This is just cut the arms of the victims so they bleed them. They would use aromatic herbs, or they would lace the boils, sort of prick the boils. Now, all this added to terrible sanitary conditions. The plague spread like nothing, killed so many people. Now, at that stage, about the year 1347 to 1349, some mobs in European cities turned against minorities like the Jews. They called them troublemakers and heretics because the Jews weren't dying in large numbers like other people. Well, on further investigation, the leaders of that time, those who cared, found that the Jews were following strict biblical teaching in the book of Leviticus in chapter 13, which I encourage you to read. The chapter talks on how you treat boils, swelling, and all forms of skin diseases. And what more, when the city of Venice, which was a large trading port at that time, when they learned of this, they began to isolate sailors coming on ships. They would isolate them for 30 days. They called this exercise Trentino. I think this must be an Italian word, Trentino. Well, Latin word. They later extended these days to 40, calling it Quarantino. I think you're picking something. Quarantino is how we have our English word quarantine or quarantine, whichever way you want to pronounce it. The plague spread was slowed down with Quarantino, and eventually it was defeated. Now, likewise, I ask you to adjust in this season and learn something new and obey the messages of government to stay home, to self-isolate, and to reflect, and to retool, and to refresh, and to grow. As a recap, number 2, you must have a product that is reliable, that solves a particular need on the market. You must understand the product so well that you are able to help the customer understand it in a similar manner and fashion that you do. Listen, it doesn't help your cause at all if you know so little about what you sell and you're trying to convince other people to follow you. It's a wrong way to approach things. 3, you must try and explore more needs the customer might have than just the expressed ones he or she has verbalized or advertised in the press. Listen, it's not enough to pick newspaper adverts and apply for jobs. No. To explore more needs requires you to work hard at your approach to clients and to do in-depth investigation before you rush to demonstrate your solution. You must aim correctly and not jump to conclusions on customer needs. Number 4, please understand, that the 4 stages I have mentioned above are a simple guideline to help you think through the sales approach. They're not a strict code that you must rigorously go through in the same ascending order. As you grow and get experience in this skill of selling, you will learn to start at any point among the 4 and still achieve the objective. Number 5, please understand that some big sales, and please listen carefully, big sales tend to be different from small sales. Small sales, people make quick decisions. Big sales require time. As an example, recently we were asked to raise a certain amount of money for the water conference that was held in Uganda at the end of Feb 2020. We were asked to go to a list of companies. Now, of course, our approach could not be the same as how we sell a liter of milk or how we sell guarding service. In the last 2, customers tend to make decisions because the amounts are small. In fact, I'd like the TAP team to find time and share their experience and lessons on how they sold the Afro conference so we can help check the mistakes, so help other members to learn. Now, while the fundamentals between the large and small sales remain similar, big sales require a deeper understanding of the buyer, and on there you must add extremely good communication approach. On there you must include a level of authority and commitment at your department or company that can drive the process. I hope by saying this you do not think I'm asking you to remain dependent on senior people in your departments or on company leaders. No, you can do it at whatever level if you have good guidance. A big sale can take a longer time that you may need to manage the stages very carefully, as I have mentioned, so you don't fall off in the process, and by falling off you open a window for the competition to get in. Now, I want to conclude our session today with some practice questions, which I want you to answer and send me back email or voice so that I can gauge whether we are making a difference by building your skill in this teaching. The first question: what do you think is the most important stage among the 4 that I have outlined, and why? Second question: if you have tried to conduct a sale of any kind in the past in the company that you work for, what has been your greatest hindrance or a challenge? Number 3 question, practice question: how has this session sort of helped you to improve the odds of making a sale next time? I'd like to thank you for listening to me, for being attentive. Our next session will be on Friday, April 10th, 2020 at 9 a.m. April 10th, 2020 at 9 a.m. And we will expand on one of the most important levels of the 4-stage sales process. Stay safe. God be with you. Thank you.